Hello, welcome to Technotherapist, and here we are with another session on Apple Vision Pro. So, in the previous session, there was a lot of feedback and some great response, due to which I was trying to learn some more stuff about immersive spaces and interactions with 3D objects. So, in this video, we are going to see how to launch an immersive space from a separate window and then add some objects to your immersive space using Reality Composer Pro, and then add interactions using your code using SwiftUI. So if you are looking at this, so let me just show you how this used to be initially. So we had a button here. I think this is, yeah. So we had a button here, and when we tap on this button, then this space used to launch. And then when I tap on each object, it starts rotating. So this is what we are going to build. So let's start by creating a new project, a new Vision OS app, and let's name it Rotating Planets. Create it. When you create a new app, uh, the Apple Vision Pro gives you this sort of preview and this sort of app by default, and you can hover around it and you can see that there is one 3D object that they have put inside the window, and this is a sidebar and some content. So this is what we get when we create a new app. So this whole session has two parts now. First of all, we'll add our 3D objects in Reality Composer Pro project, and then we'll save it, and then we'll come back to Xcode and we'll manipulate our objects and add tab gestures to it inside our SwiftUI code. So let's launch the Reality Composer Pro project. So one way to launch is using the Xcode and Open Developer tool and launch this Reality Composer Pro. This will launch it as a new window and you can create a project or open an existing project. But we are not going to do that. We are going to do it using our own project. So whenever you create a new project, the xrOS uh, by default adds a package into your Swift code, which is a Reality Kit content package. So you see this is a Swift package file, and you have this Reality Kit Composer Pro project embedded as a package in your in your xrOS project. So if you click on this package, you will see that this is some sort of a 3D view, but we're not going to work in this because this is Xcode. So you see this button here, and when you press this button, it will open this specific project in Reality Composer Pro. So this Composer Pro is a new tool, and for those who have worked with this Composer Pro in iOS and iPad OS apps, so they might be familiar with it. But this is a new Mac tool. So what you see here is exactly the 3D space that you build on, and this is the exact 3D space that looks like the one in which we are, building our real app. So whatever objects we put here, they are going to appear the same in our application. And this is the left-hand panel where you have all the objects listed, and this is the right-hand panel where all the properties of these objects are there. You don't need to go into a lot of details right now, since we are going to add a new object for our own like rotation and all of that. So let's create a new scene because this scene has already a sphere and some other plane material objects. So let's create a new scene and name it planets. And now you have a separate scene, right? So you can access both of these scenes in your code using these keys. But we are in planets one, and this is the empty one. So this is the space. this circle that you see, this is the place that you stand on. So this is the place where you stand. So whatever object you place in this area, if you place the object exactly at this place, you will not be able to see this object when the app launches or when your scene launches, because it will be exactly at the place where you are standing. So you'll have to, bend down to see, or look down to see, or move a little bit to see the object. So be careful, very careful in placing the objects. I'll show you the dimensions as well. I'll explain you the dimensions on how to put objects. So let's just put a new object, and just like in Xcode you add new buttons and new text fields. Similarly, there is a plus button here in this Composer Pro. And let's switch to the icon part, and you'll have a lot of objects that you can put here. These are all the objects that are created by Apple, by yeah, Apple, I guess. So you can use any of them, and they are all 3D objects. So let's just use the Saturn. Let's place it here. As soon as you place it, it will appear as an object. I don't know why it's appearing. Yeah, so now it's here. So let's just click on this so that it comes to the default space. Now for the dimensions part, this is the z-axis, and the negative z-axis means that the object is in front of you. So now we are moving in front of us. If you put this in a positive z-axis, so you see this is a z-axis here, and this is right now positive. So positive z-axis means the object is placed exactly behind us. So our face is towards there, negative z-axis. So if we want to place this Saturn in front of us, we are going to put it in the positive space, a negative space, negative z space. So let's just switch it to meters, and let's say 1 meter in front of us. This right and left, this x-axis is the right and left part where you can put your object in your space in front of it. So this is the front part, this is the right and left part, and this y-axis is the height part. So if you want your Saturn to be visible right in front of your face, so it might be somewhere around 1 meter or maybe 2 meters. And once it moves out of this viewport, so you can double click the object again so it becomes visible again. But be mindful that this is the point which is the center where you stand, and this is the negative z-axis. So we have placed this Saturn in front of us in the 3D space. Now there are two things that we need to do in order to make it clickable, because we need to tap on it, right? We need to tap on it in order to rotate. So there are two properties that you need to add, and one from two components that you need to add. So you just select the Saturn and go to add component and add collision component to it. And one more component is input target. These two are the required parameters in order to add tap gestures to this property in code. So we don't need to change anything here. We just need to add it. Now we need to save this, Control S, and we need to go back to Xcode. Now let's see how we can start building our scene. So once this load, you will see that it's not loading. So yeah, sometimes it crashes due to some reason. So let's just remove this, and we need to add the scene that we created into a new space. So there are three or four things that we'll be doing. We'll be creating a new file, and we'll be putting our scene into that file. All the objects that we created, the Saturn that we created, we're going to put that into our file, and then we need to launch that file on a button press. So we'll add a button here, and we'll launch that file. So let's see, and let's add a button. Uh, and it should be uh, Oh yeah, I'm not very familiar with the Swift part, so let's just see how the button works here. Okay, so it has a constructor. Uh, so let's see, open Saturn, and let's just play this app for once so that we can see that whether a button is appearing or not. Okay, so yeah, we have the button here. So now on this button press, we need to create a new screen, and that screen needs to be a fully immersive screen. So we don't need a background or anything. We just need the pure Saturn in front of us in our real space. So in order to do that, we need to first create a new file, and I'll be looking at the code that I have already created because I'm also learning this with the WWDC videos, all of that. So let's create a new file, new SwiftUI file, which would be called uh, planets. And this, let's preview it. It should work. Hmm, let's just, okay, so hello world is directly appearing in front of us as a new view. So let's just put our Reality Kit Composer Pro objects inside this view. So in order to do that, there is a component in Swift which is called SwiftUI, which is called Reality View. And inside this Reality View, you need to put, this is a closure actually, and you need to put your code inside this. So what we will do is we'll pick up the scene that we created in the Reality Kit Composer Pro, and we'll pick up all the contents of the scene and add to it, like add, all those contents to the scene. It says import Reality Kit, so let's import Reality Kit, and let's import the Reality Kit content as well. We'll be needing it. Uh, so let's just put our content inside this. So now you must be wondering where I learned all these, right? Where I got to know about this. So if you want, you can go to the developer apple.com and you'll see all the WWDC videos that are teaching all of this stuff. Obviously, it's not very straightforward. You need to figure out some things, but these are all the. There are a lot of videos, a lot of more videos where I got to know, where I figured out things on how to do it. So this is a part where you add the scene to your reality view. So in this uh, object, we'll type our scene name that we kept. So let's write planets, and you see Saturn is here now. So it's 3 meters up. Oh no, 1 meter up and 1 meter forward. So it's right in front of us, right? So this content is added now. Now what we need to do, we need to launch this whole thing in an immersive space. So if you go to your main application, this is the main app file, right? Your project name app file. You'll see a window group, and that window group contains your first view, this content view, which is like this, which is the default view, the first view. So in order to create more navigations and more registering more views, what you need to do is you need to embed an immersive space and give it an ID. You can give it any ID. I am giving it Saturn, and you put your new view inside this. So now what it does is it says that this planet's view should be opened in an immersive space and not in a window, not in a normal window. It should be an immersive space. Immersive space means it should be in a real world, like the object should be hovering around you, right? So let's just add this, and there is one how do we call it, right? We need to call it now. So on this button press, we need to launch our immersive space. So how to launch it? You will find it in the Apple developer documentation. So you see, this is what we did, and now we need to open it. So we'll have to create a variable in an environment variable inside our view, which says open immersive space. And now we'll uh, open immersive space and we'll give it an ID. The ID will be Saturn, the same ID that we registered here, Saturn. But since this is a future, so in terms of Flutter, if you talk about Flutter, so it's a future, it's an async. So we need to await it. And this whole thing needs to be inside a task. That's how you open an immersive space. Async call in a function. Okay, now it's working. So this is how you open an immersive space from a button press. So before we move forward, before we add any interactions to this Saturn, let's just try and launch it in our simulator and see that if it works. So this is our window, main window, and let's open Saturn. Where is it? Where is it? I think there is a problem and we need to figure out what's the problem. Let's run it again. Let's find our Saturn somewhere around our space. It should be right in front of us actually, but let's see if it's down there. No, it's not down there. So I guess it should be somewhere around here, but let me figure this out. It should be somewhere around here. Reality Kit, entity name planets, and let me check my previous code. Maybe I've done something wrong. Entity name, yes, it's correct. Everything is correct. I think this is also showing it correctly. The space is also showing it correctly. It's an immersive space. Content view adds an immersive space. Planets in Reality Kit. I think I need to clean it. Let's clean build. Maybe it works. Since this all is in beta mode, so you expect all of these sometimes. Yeah, now it's working. So you see, our Saturn is exactly in front of us, but and yeah, one more good thing is that our previous application, like previous window of the application, is intact. It's there, and you can literally move this around in other spaces, and the immersive space is still there. It's intact, so you don't need to worry about if your window is colliding with this. So it won't. So let's now add some tab gestures to it and try to rotate it. So once you are done with launching your immersive space, you need to add some tab gestures to it. So at the end of the reality view inside your planets view, you need to add a gesture, and the gesture would be tab gesture dot uh, target to any entity dot on ended. So after value, yeah. So what it does, what this code does is it adds a tab gesture. Sorry, It needs to be this. It needs to be a function. So what it does is when you add a gesture, it says tap gesture and target it to any entity coming from reality view. And after the tap is done, after it's ended, after I have tapped, this throws us a value inside and we can do anything that we want inside. So value has all the gesture value, the entity. So you can, play around with the entity. This entity is exactly the entity that you have tapped on. So you can add multiple entities and it will automatically give you the corresponding entity in its value. So now let's try to, move or rotate or do something with this entity here in this value. So how did I know about how to move it? Similarly, like previous, I went to this code in the developer documentation and they are transforming the entity and they are moving it a bit in the 3D space. So let's just copy this code and run it and see that what is happening with this when we tap on it. So let's just run it again and see what happens. So this is transform, not rotate. We are going to rotate, right? So let's tap on this and let's tap on this entity. It's not rotating, it's not moving. Why? Entity, gesture entity, value.move, clean build, maybe. So this is in beta, right? So there might be some problems like these. So don't worry about it. They're going to be fixed. I think that this is related to some caching or something like that. Therefore, the entities, they don't respond once we clean. So let's build it again. And let's run it. Hopefully this should run now. Now it's moving. So you see, now it's moving. I think that this was because it is behind the our window is behind our view, so therefore it was creating a problem. Otherwise, it should move again. Yes, it's moving. So this is, transform, where you give it a three-dimensional position and it moves to that position. So now how did I figure out rotation? So it's pretty easy. This is SwiftUI code, so you'll find it anywhere in the on Google or internet. So what I did was with rotation, I edited the transform dot rotation entity, that rotation property of this, and this is what I did. This SIMD quad F, this is the rotation part where you give it an angle and give it an axis, and it starts rotating on that angle and an axis. Uh, this multiply into is, I figured it out after reading a lot of articles, that when you have to add when you have to rotate an object, you don't do plus equals to, you do multiply equals to, because if you do plus equals to, it will scale or it will move as well. So in order to have three-dimensional rotation, you need to have multiply equal to. So that's what I figured out after a lot of hit and trials and going through internet. This is an angle of rotation. So let's see now um, if this rotates or not. Let's move it a bit and then try to rotate it. Yeah, it's rotating, right? It rotates 90 degrees, I guess. Yes, 180 degrees. So yeah, so this is what it's all about. And since my code, I added a timer as well. so that it keeps on rotating. So let's just, and one more thing I did, which was after this reality view is appeared uh, on appear. Okay, after this reality view appears, I want to dismiss the previous window because that's blocking our view. So I want only the Saturn part. So what I did was, just like we have this open immersive space, we have, for dismissing a window, we have dismiss window, and we can just write the same name here, and dismiss window ID. We didn't give an ID to content view, right? So we need to give it an ID, main. So now we say that ID main. So dismiss this after the reality view appears. So let's see if it works. Yeah, so it disappears, and now our main view is here. We can hover around and we can tap on it to rotate it. Now let's add the final timer as well, just to show you that how the timer works. It's simple, it's nothing fancy, it's SwiftUI code. So I added a timer, schedule timer, with interval of 3 seconds. That after every 3 seconds, it runs this code and it repeats on true. So this is what I did. So let's say let timer equals to timer dot scheduled time interval 3 seconds, bool true, and timer in code. Inside this code, we are going to rotate this again and again, and timer dot fire. Let's see what it does. Awesome. It's flickering a bit. So I don't know why it's flickering a bit. It should not. In my own code, it was not flickering. But yeah, let's make it linear so that it does not stop. It keeps on rotating. Yeah, now it's fine. And now it will keep on rotating on a certain axis, and you can change your axis by this value. So it's rotating on, I guess, 1 degree on y-axis. No, on axis, I don't know. So this is one axis, and it keeps on rotating on that. So you can try other rotations as well. Now, if I wanted to add more items in my in my view, so what I would do, I would just go back to this Reality Composer Pro. I'll add more items. Let's say uh, let's rotate a skull. Let's try rotating a skull and give it the same parameters, 0, +1, +1. It is exactly at the same place, and make it a bit right. So 0.5, yes. And add the same components to this: input target and collision. Control S, go back to Xcode, remove this, and just run it. It should run because we have already added the tab gesture to any entity, right? So it should run on any entity as long as that entity has the input target and the collision. So let's just wait for it to build. Hopefully it should work. Awesome. So now we have these two objects, and the awesome part is that we didn't have to add rotation for this skull separately. This skull is also going to rotate. And let's try to rotate this skull on a different axis, maybe. I don't know if it breaks the code or not. Let's try. Awesome. This is rotating on a different angle now. Since we have the same angle for both, so the Saturn is also rotating on the same axis. So this is how you try to build, you try to interact with objects around your 3D space. So it was really, really amazing figuring all of this out. And I know that this video is a bit rough right now, since I am also not very experienced in this, and there are no actually, there is nothing related to this, the problems in Vision Pro on the internet right now. It's all Apple developer documentation. So there are very less people working on this. So yeah, I know I'm not sounding very confident in all of this coding. You should also try this and keep on, exploring this. And this is really cool. So let's see you in another video, and I'll try to experiment some more stuff on this and come back to you with another exciting video. Thank you so much.